3 topics of conversation today: how to hire and manage business development people. Number 2, how to conduct yourself as a leader in terms of delegation and time management. And number 3, how to benefit from actually going to networking events and not being bored standing in the corner nursing a beer. And that's by being intentionally curious. We hit on all of these topics today in my conversation with David Hernandez, the managing director of Alicosoft. David has a ton of experience in both the construction industry and in leadership and sales. He brings that all to the table today for your benefit. So enjoy my conversation with David, share it with other people. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. David, welcome to Construction Genius.
Hey, Eric. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You know, it's interesting. I work with contractors all day long, and one of the challenges that contractors have is managing their business development folks. Sometimes I get this picture that the president of the commercial contractor, he knows that he's hired some business development people, but they're kind of over there doing their thing, and he's not quite sure what they're doing. So why do commercial contractors struggle to manage business development folks?
I think the main thing is that's not the world they're in, right? They're in construction. So understanding the world of business development and sales and relationship building, they understand it within the construction realm, but actually going out and negotiating and finding new clients, it's a different world than what they're used to. So I think that is part of probably why it's just understanding they are in different worlds, even though they're part of the same company.
So what should a contractor look for when they're hiring a business development person?
Obviously, the characteristics of any good business development or sales, you want somebody that's got integrity and ethics, obviously. You'd love somebody that has already kind of brings a somewhat of a network with them. Maybe they're plugged into associations or they've done that in the past. But I think you just want somebody who's hungry, somebody that is willing to go out and do the work and not sit back and wait for things to come. I think a lot of times going out and doing the work is probably the biggest challenge for a lot of people. So I would just say ethics, a lot of energy, and somebody with a network.
Ethics, energy, and a network. That's really good. How do I know if someone's got energy?
Obviously, there's always going to be some questions that you can ask them and references, but I think sometimes it's just a matter of like, take them on a tour of your company, take them on some project sites, see how they interact with people just naturally, organically. I think you can quickly tell if somebody's engaging. When I say energy, it's maybe just more of just being able to willing to just have a conversation with somebody and not be kind of standoffish.
Construction is incredibly complex, and I just have pictures in my mind of business development people who they're good people. They do have that ethic. They do have that energy, perhaps, but they don't have the technical savvy. And so there's often times when you might be in a situation and you completely miss an opportunity simply because you don't have the ears to hear the opportunity. How important do you think is that technical savvy when you're bringing someone onto a business development position?
I think you want to have some background, obviously. They want to be able to talk to the right audience and have an intelligent conversation. But it's similar. I share this with even kind of like what I do in my daily work. When I walk into my office and I flip the light switch on, I understand electricity, but I don't necessarily know how that's completely wired and all the voltage and everything that kind of went into that. I just know the light works. If I need to know about that, I could probably find an expert to do that. So I think you would need somebody who, like I said, they understand enough to have the conversation, but also that they're not so proud that they would be able to lean on some of the experts within the company. I think that shows a lot to me when you say, I may not have all the answers, but I am willing to find them for you. And I got a guy who can help me, answer that question for you.
That's
so
great.
The technical savvy is important, but the networking, I think, helps too.
That's awesome. So let's say the first 90 days, I've hired a BD person. What do the first 90 days look like in terms of getting them up and running, making sure that they've got the resources that they need and that I'm setting them up for success, in other words?
Yeah, you asked the question earlier about what is probably one of the biggest challenges. I think the first 30-ish days would be to make sure they really understand your culture, your vision, your team, and there's some collaboration that's built internally. Obviously, you want them out networking, but I think we hire people and we want them to go out and we want to create business today. We don't spend the time building the vision of the culture. So when that 90 days comes and they're not successful, a lot of times it's because we didn't share the right vision with them or we didn't bring them in for a collaborative environment. So I would say the first 30 days for sure, build that collaboration, open up your Rolodex. Let's introduce some easy wins, some warm relationships so they can get some background. And then after that, just let them run and let them be free. I think you have to have that vision first. For sure.
That's interesting. Yeah. And the willingness to introduce people to your network, huh?
Yes. Yep.
Why do you think business development people fail? So let's say I've hired someone, maybe I've even onboarded them, but maybe they're struggling for some reason. What are those top reasons why they struggle in a construction company specifically?
I would think probably the biggest challenge is we get in our own way. It's pride a little bit, possibly. We don't want to ask for help. When we're hired for a job, we're excited. And the expectation is, well, we know everything. It's okay for you to come in day one and realize you don't know everything and ask questions and learn more. So I think if you set aside a little bit of that pride and ego, I think you have a lot more chance to be successful. And then sometimes it might not be a good fit culturally, it might not be a good fit geographically. There's other things, but I think the biggest driver as we get in our own way. I think that's probably the biggest piece of the failure, in my opinion.
You mentioned quite a bit about networking and the network that someone brings to the table. In your experience, what are the biggest mistakes contractors make when it comes to establishing and developing a network of just their general network for their business?
You hire somebody that you meet at a function and they are engaging at this event. It's like, oh, this guy will be perfect, or this girl will be perfect in our organization. So we don't necessarily maybe do our due diligence. So we just think we hire people off of a short conversation. I think the other piece is hiring friends, family members, or really just comes down to just vetting. I think you need somebody that you're not emotionally tied to, right? Like I said, a friend or a family member, but that you're okay with kind of entering them, like we said earlier, like giving them access to your world. Because a lot of times people don't want to share that information. So that's another reason that failing is lack of sharing that information as well. So
it seems that it's important also for business development people to understand what your niche is and the types of work that you're looking for.
100%. Yes. Because you could have somebody who's worked exclusively for a trade partner that maybe they do MEP, where I'm working now for a general contractor, and it's a completely different value add or value proposition or conversation I'm having just to try to network. Yeah, so that I would say 100% understanding. And that comes back to that first 30 days, really understanding the company, the culture, the vision of the leaders of what they're trying to accomplish. And then I think that would help that as well.
How often should the person who the business development person reports to, how often should they be meeting with their business development person, do you think?
I would say early on, you want to try to have as many check-ins as possible. Obviously, you don't want to hire somebody to micromanage them, but you definitely want to make sure that you're supporting them. They understand that. But again, if you're not communicating from a leadership perspective, they don't know the expectations. So I would say weekly, probably minimally, even as an ongoing thing. Obviously, as they need, probably more. But I would say the bare minimum, once a week for sure.
Okay. So it's interesting because a lot of the struggles that business development people have may be around the quality of the leadership in the company that they're entering into. So I'd like to shift the conversation a little bit and talk about leadership and get your views on this. What is the one leadership cliche that people have bought into over the years that's totally wrong, in your opinion?
So I think that it's definitely when I get to become the boss, I can kind of do what I want to do. That's probably one of the biggest cliches. Or the boss doesn't have to work that hard. That's probably another one. That is completely backwards for sure. At least from a good leadership perspective.
So what do you mean by that? Because I think one of the challenges that leaders have is that they micromanage, right? So that they continue to work really hard, but it's because that they're doing other people's jobs and they don't let things go and they don't trust people. So aren't I supposed to be accomplishing more through others?
So I think a characteristic of a good leader is delegation. There are leaders who have a hard time letting things go. I mean, I've struggled with that obviously throughout my career. But when you learn kind of the power of delegation by communicating your vision and they understand everything that's supposed to be happening and to watch your team flourish, is pretty amazing. I think if you're hovering and you're telling people what to do, you're probably more of a manager than a leader, right? Because the manager's giving you orders, giving you marching orders. A leader show you what to do, then get out of the way. And their job then is to help you remove roadblocks and stop obstacles so you can continue to be successful.
So give me the best process for delegation that you know. What's the most effective delegation process?
That's a tough one because I struggle with that sometimes. So I think it starts with clear expectations. You have to be able to clearly disseminate what it is you're trying to accomplish to your team. So first of all, the goal is clear. Everybody knows this is where we're headed. And then you have to trust that along that path, when things happen, you need to give them the ability to pivot and take a different route. I share with my team all the time. I said, it's like, I know if I want to go to Indianapolis, I know the roads I need to take. But if I come up against a roadblock, I can't just turn around and go home. I have to find a different direction. But my goal hasn't changed, just maybe the path to get there. So as a leader, I have to trust that my team has the ability to make those pivots and changes without me panicking, say, wait a minute, why are we going this way? So learning to trust them when the path changes, as long as the goal hasn't changed, is another one. So the destination is clear. And then at the end of it, right, you're there alongside of them, making sure that maybe you remove that roadblock so that they don't have to change paths. Those are the things I think make good leaders. Not necessarily, I don't want to need to drive in the car with them. I just need to help them get to the final goal, whether that's removing roadblocks, giving them a path, but ultimately, let them drive.
So how do I distinguish between a roadblock that I should be removing and an obstacle that they need to overcome?
So I share this with my team and my kids, actually. If you come against a problem, you should defeat all avenues solving that problem before you need to ask for help. So that means, did I do research? Have I looked up? Have I reached out to maybe another colleague? Like, you solve this. I have no more answers. I've done all this research. Now I'll reach out to the leader. I think if you empower your team to do that, they start to solve a lot of problems themselves. And so by the time they get to me, I know it's a roadblock I need to remove because I've trusted that they've done 2 or 3 or 4 things to try to move it themselves, and it just didn't happen.
How do I, as a leader, stop my people from interrupting me as I'm working on the highest, as I'm utilizing my time to work on the only the tasks I can do? How do I stop my people from interrupting me to deal with their issues?
You have to protect your time. So that comes with some standing meetings, right? So you have that team meeting. I'm a firm believer in having a meeting with an agenda so that we're not just meeting to meet. Like, I typically start mine at the first of the week. Here's what we're trying to accomplish this week. Here's my schedule. Here's my schedule. Here's what I have going on. Unless the house is on fire, I'm not available until then. And I set aside one day a week. It's typically Fridays, where I try to be very minimal on my meetings. I will block time for admin stuff, but my team knows that Friday is kind of my problem solving day. It's taken a little bit to get there. I've had to kind of set that expectation along the way, but we have our standing meetings. Like, let's dump all the problems on the table. Let's solve them together as a group. And then I can then confidently work throughout the week. And then if they need me, obviously they can raise it, but it's usually because it's a major issue. So I've just had to manage my time, I guess. It's probably
No, it's really good. You said that it took a while for the team to get there. Why do you think that was that it took a while?
part of it was they were a new team, so they were new. So I think as a new employee, understanding kind of what, I guess, what authority you have or what parameters you have, like how far can I go before I need to get permission? Again, I try to communicate. We know what our goal is. We know what our vision is. I know I sound like a broken record here, but if we know what that goal and that vision is, if you're making a decision, as long as it doesn't deviate from what our goal and our vision is, I don't necessarily need to be a part of that decision-making process. Now, obviously, if it's going to cost money or something else, maybe we have a conversation. But if your decision aligns with our core goals of our company, aligns with the vision of what we're doing, you don't need me to say, yeah, we can do that. Make that decision. So empowering your team is very, very freeing for most leaders, but we're afraid to do that because I think we feel like we need to have our hand in everything. But you just have to learn you're hiring good people. And sometimes it doesn't work that way. But for the most part, if you give people the power, you're going to build them to help you really be successful. So,
who is the biggest influence on you in your career from a leadership perspective?
I've worked for a lot of really good leaders. I've had really positive servant leaders that kind of taught me what it means to like roll your sleeves up and help people. I lean a lot on my current CEO, Jonathan Hunter, who I think he's really good about putting people in position and letting them do their job. I know it seems silly and very simple, but it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, not hovering. I've put you in a position. I trust your judgment and your decision making. And that kind of filters down to my team. And so that's probably one of the biggest, like, if my boss has given me that trust, why wouldn't I pass that trust on to my team as well? So that's been very influential.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying my interview with David. And here is a quick reminder to go out and buy Construction Genius, my book. It's all about sales, marketing, leadership, strategy. It's all targeted to construction company owners and leaders. And if you buy the book, it's going to tremendously benefit you because it's straight to the point. It's not messing around. It's in your world, addressing the issues and the challenges that you have as a leader. So go out to Amazon and purchase yourself a copy and get copies for every single leader in your team. And I'll just remind you, if you purchase 10 or more copies, all you have to do is email me and we'll set up an exclusive Q&A session for you and your leadership team. They can ask me any questions that they'd like about the book. In addition to that, during that session, it'll be a 60-minute session over Zoom. I'll do a quick training class for your leadership team that they'll be tremendously benefited by. And I would normally charge $2,000 for a 60-minute session like this. And if you purchase 10 or more copies of the book at $20 a book, I will do it at no charge for you. So go out to Amazon, purchase those books, contact me, eric@constructiongenius.com. Let's begin a dialogue, and we'll make sure that we're upgrading your leadership team. All right, back to the interview now with David. What do you think is a good definition of trust?
Being willing to accept the outcome, even if it's not the way you would have done it, right? That's tough because somebody might make a decision that the outcome is still positive, but it may not have been how you've done it. So you've got to kind of back off and say, okay, you make that decision, even though it's not the way I would have done it.
Okay, excellent. Who was your worst leader and why? You don't need to name names, but protect the guilty.
Yeah, so Yes, I worked for a very militant sales director who was very metrics driven. It was all about how many calls did you make today, how many appointments you're running. If you didn't have 4 appointments, you're not getting out of the office. It was very, very just heavy handed. And if we struggled, the conversation was, well, I hired you. You're the professional. You should figure this out. It was very tough on me because I was a fairly young sales rep. And so like trying to like navigate, but not upset this manager was pretty weird balance.
It's interesting because when it comes to sales, I think about it is very metric driven, and particularly business development, because I might have my business development person in the corner and they're saying, yes, boss, I'm working. But then I'm thinking, well, when did you last bring a project in that we could take a look at? So how do I balance the need to give people autonomy with the need to track their performance and make sure that they're performing in such a way that's justifying the money I'm paying them?
Yeah. So, I mean, as a business owner, you know this, as a managing director, like we're responsible for the P&L at the end of the day. We need results. However, I've learned that sales is the opposite definition of insanity. If you keep doing the same thing over and over, eventually it's going to happen, right? So to me, I don't really preach so much about how much activity we're doing. It's really making sure that we're doing quality activity, because you can have one business development person who makes 50 contacts and schedules maybe 10 deals or 10 appointments, and you have one who makes 10 contacts and 10 appointments. They're both equally effective. They just work differently. But what I would do then is then connect those two business development people and say, hey, maybe this one's doing something that this one can benefit from and vice versa, and let them work together as opposed to kind of trying to manage it from a metrics perspective. Now, I will manage metrics, obviously, if performance isn't where it needs to be, but it's usually more of a conversation of, hey, how can I help? What struggles are we up against? What roadblocks are we facing? Step into coach if necessary. But I found that peer-to-peer coaching and peer-to-peer help has been a lot more productive than it coming from a manager or a managing director.
What are some key questions that you need to ask in a coaching situation?
The first question I ask, honestly, is how they feel, right? Because I think that it's emotionally, you're not performing, you have stress and anxiety, and you start to worry. So I try to first address that. So listen, like everybody has bad days, everybody has bad months. Like, let's take that off the table. Talk to me about your day. How are you managing and structuring your day? Again, if we've done our job, right, they should have some goals set. So they have an annual goal. Then we kind of break that down. If they don't, that's the first place we'll start. Let's set some goals. If you're only doing this, let's set some goals for this week and let's see if we can get some easy wins. And even if a win isn't necessarily a deal closed, if you're meeting some of those KPIs and those goals, there's some wins in there. And I think you start to kind of then get a little bit of momentum going. That's typically how I would approach the coaching session.
How do you know when someone's BSing you in those coaching sessions? Particularly because, again, if I'm the contractor, if I'm the leader of my company, I'm talking to the BD person and maybe they've got a good talk game, but they don't have a good production game. How do I know when someone's BSing me and I need to call them on their stuff?
So I think visibility throughout a company is important. So whether it's construction, whether it's software, whatever kind of business you're running, you should probably have a pretty effective CRM tool being able to track what's going on. So you can almost see activity. You can see emails, you can see phone calls, you can see some activity. And I think as a leader, it's okay for you to check in to see how things are going with key accounts, key people. Because if you're worried about doing that from a leadership perspective, because you might upset a sales rep or a business development rep, you probably don't have the right person in place. Because when I was in business development, my manager said, well, I'm going to call your customers. I'd love for you to call my customers. My customers love me. That's great. Because it's a good thing. If I was worried about, oh, don't call them, then I'm probably not doing it. So to me, that's a good way to kind of sniff that out and then make yourself available. And I know it's hard for a CEO of a construction company, but a VP or somebody to come to a networking event with me, see how I operate, see what I'm doing so that there is some visibility into, is this person are they just full of it that they don't really know anybody? Because if you go to an association event and you don't know anybody, they probably haven't been doing the calls.
Okay. So let me ask you this. At a networking event, some people there, they just don't like going to networking events, right? So in your experience, what's the best way to interact and to get the most out of a networking event?
I would say be intentionally curious. Don't go be a salesperson. Go there truly to genuinely learn about other people who are there, learn more about the association if possible, how to get plugged in. But when you have a conversation with somebody, don't talk about you. Ask about them. What do they do? How long have you been there? Like, just like you would if you met them at a bar or a sporting event or something, like have a human conversation. You will find that you win a lot more business when you ask about them versus you. And then when the opportunity comes for them to ask, what do you do? That's okay to share that as well. I think you have to be intentionally curious. And I do it because I like the industry. So I'll kind of figure out interesting ways or tell me about a cool project you've done. So I try to dig a little deeper.
So that's good. The intentionally curious. Just give me 2 or 3 questions that I can ask that can be in my toolbox, so to speak, that I can bring out as I start a conversation with someone I've never met before.
So the first question I would ask, obviously, if there's no way to know what company you're with, I'll ask who you currently work with. And I may ask if you're a general contractor or subcontractor. There, I'm going to ask you, talk to me about one of the most cool projects you've been a part of, and most of the time they think of probably just the last one they're on. I'm like, well, was that the coolest project you were ever on? It's okay to ask that question again. So I want to ask them about the projects. I'll ask them about their background. Like, why did you get into construction? What made you choose this industry? Right. And some of them, they'll give you, well, my parents, a lot of times you'll find it's a multi-generational thing, right? My grandpa was in it. My dad was in it. Now I'm in it. And so you start to really learn a little bit more about their family. And then I would I would probably even ask, like, man, the industry deals with a lot of things, facing a lot of problems right now. Like, what are some of the things you guys are fighting right now? Like, you can kind of start that conversation just as if we're all dealing with the same stuff, whether it's labor shortages or cost overruns or whatever. And they start to kind of give you learn a lot about the industry that may not necessarily be that person, could be with somebody else, and that you could help other people solve as well. Because you can ask them how they're solving it and share that knowledge.
That's great. I really love that phrase, though, intentionally curious, and really going with that sort of open mind and willingness to be more interested in other people than you are in yourself. And that can really help you in those networking events. Tell us a little bit more, David, about Alicosoft and what you guys do.
We're a global company headquartered out of the UK. I am the managing director of Alicosoft LLC, which is the US-based arm. We are a planning and scheduling software. We have other solutions that we offer outside of the US, but in the US, primarily it's planning and scheduling. We've been in the US now about 11 years. And it's simply, for me, it's very biased. We pride ourselves on being very easy to use, scalable. We compete with Microsoft Project and P6. I think we're easier to use than both of those. We're as complex as you need to be. If you're building skyscrapers or if you just build a custom home, our product is very scalable.
Who's your ideal client? Who's the one construction company where, dude, when they use your stuff, it just kills? It's awesome.
I would probably say any size general contractors. The large general contractors seem to benefit the most. So we've got a pretty good handle on some of the 400 companies that are utilizing us on multi-billion-dollar projects, because we do have that complexity, ease to use, so it's easy for adoption, limits business disruption. But that mid-sized general contractor that's looking to maybe take that next step to a little bit more complex, a little bit bigger projects, that's the sweet spot that I think we're trying to focus on in the US. Obviously, everybody wants the big boys, but I think that mid-market general contractor is overlooked a lot of times.
Excellent. How can people get in touch with you, David?
So they can obviously visit our website, alicosoft.com. I'd love for you all to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. But the website's probably the easiest way. It has all of our contact information, the sales contact as well. It gives you obviously high-level information about what we do.
Terrific. Excellent. So we'll have those links in the show notes. Last question here, David. You're in Houston, Texas. Is that right?
I am in Houston. Yes, sir.
What's the one barbecue joint I got to hit in Houston when I get down there?
Oh, my goodness. Actually, probably one of my favorites is not even in Houston. It's a little further south in Alvin, Texas. Joe's Barbecue. Joe's is pretty good.
Alvin, Texas. Joe's Barbecue.
Yep. Although I cook some pretty good barbecue, so it's hard to eat out.
What's your favorite barbecue? What do you do good?
Brisket. Yeah, I make a pretty good brisket.
You do a brisket?
Oh, yeah.
How long do you cook it for?
Well, it's about 13 to 15 hours, depending on the size. I have a big family, so we typically cook a pretty big brisket. So I'm not these guys that's cooking for 24 hours, but yeah, it turns out really good.
That's great. That's great. Well, David, I appreciate you coming on the show here today. Thank you for coming.
A pleasure. Thanks for having me, Eric. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Take care.
That was a great conversation. I really enjoyed that idea about being intentionally curious at networking events. If you practice that, you'll find them much less painful. Feel free to connect with David on LinkedIn and at alicosoft.com. Links in the show notes, as well as links to Joe's Barbecue. Feel free to share this interview with other people. And thank you for listening to Construction Genius today.